Yeah, here we go. Already made some mistakes. That's okay. I hope you're super psyched. It is Wednesday, April 13th. And you're watching PaleocratDiaries. I'm your host, the one and only, the OG, the Paleocrat, Jeremiah Bannister, on your favorite YouTube channel, Medium Catholic. I hope you're pumped. And why is that? Because today is the day that the Lord has made. We're going to rejoice. We're going to be glad in it. We're going to howl to the sun. And why? Because Christ is King. And because we have to subject every single thought, word, and deed to His majesty. Casting down every single thought and imagination that dares to exalt itself against His kingdom, against Him. And that's what we do here. And we've been doing that on this show, following along with Kingdom of the Cults by Walter Martin. We're going to talk about it. It's going to rankle some folks, I can promise you. It's going to rankle some folks because we're talking about the Mormons. Who are they? These people coming to my door, knocking on my door. These elders with this fancy book of this magical place that, doesn't exist. How do we deal with them? What do we deal? Where do they come from? Who started it? We're going to learn all that right here. And we got to begin by doing what we do every single time. We got to resolve, number 1, take a knee for Christ the King. Number 2, never give up. Number 3, keep on smiling. And why? Because we must memento mori. We must remember that we too one day shall die. It's gonna happen. It's a bummer. It is a bummer, isn't it, a little bit? On the other hand, no way. It's not a bummer. And it's not just like, it's one of those things that happens to happen. No, that is going to lead us to a much greater place. And it's not going to be on a planet with a bunch of polygamous wives. I'll tell you that much. In fact, it's not going to be connected to this Mormon materialism, this voodoo worldview they got. It's not going to happen. So we got to dream bigger thoughts. And we dream bigger thoughts every single show right here. I'm sorry, by the way, that we're late. I don't want to say I was on time. I was still late. But I was going off doing my thing, and I realized I had forgotten to click go live. So I was like by myself in my room. I'm like, yeah, woo, you pumped up? I'm speaking to myself. And that's why when I started the show, I didn't even realize there was latency. So at the beginning of the show, you see me just derp, 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 derp. You see me at the beginning. That's a bummer. But it happens, doesn't it? It happens. It's one of those things, people are like, I talk to a lot of people who do shows like this, and especially people who are starting out, right? And they're like, man, I made a mistake, or I did this. I'm like, homeboy, I've done thousands of hours of public speaking, TV, radio, podcasting, YouTube, thousands, and I'm still making stupid mistakes, talking to myself in a microphone without pushing go live, and then pushing go live and forgetting to put up the beginning screen. So trust me, you're fine. I hope you got that coffee ready. Coffee ready through a straw. We do that here. You have to. This is a show that requires some jet fuel. And the way to do it is to drink your coffee through a straw. Bypasses the blood-brain barrier. That's what happens. Okay, before we move on, real quick, I just want to let everybody know something. It's kind of a big deal. So we're back with Saint Maker. Okay, they had to go through some reviews and stuff. We talked about this a little bit. But I got the new one. It's pretty white, okay? So this is the life planner for winter 2021 through 2022. And I'm going to be going through this. I said that I was going to the last time, but it was kind of at the tail end of their run. They'd already been doing a bunch of stuff with different shows, and I wasn't sure, how we wanted to work it out and everything. But a lot of people have reached out to me and said, I want to learn to do the Saint Maker. There's a lot there. And we really do need to learn together. And so I really encourage you, okay? I don't want to make it a patron only thing. I don't want to do that. And I'm going to say something about that in a second. So, but with the Saint Maker, I really encourage you. Number 1, email me if you want. You can do that, PaleocratDiaries@gmail.com. It's easy enough. But also, find me on Telegram. We're going to be posting a lot of stuff. We're talking to the folks over, the great folks, by the way, over at the Saint Maker. And they're responsive. They want to hear from you. They want to hear things that you think are good, things that you think they should work on. Really great people, loving the Lord, and they're genuinely trying to make themselves saints. They're trying to become saints themselves, and they're trying to say, hey, look, let's work on this together. And that's how it works, okay? So make sure if you have any questions, anything like that, of course, you can email me. But the best way, honest to goodness, is to go and check us out on Telegram. You can do that right down in the video description below. And so you can go ahead and you can click there. You can DM me. You can video chat, call, whatever. And anyone who's there can tell you I'm pretty accessible. You know, if you want to call me, just text me, let me know. Just send a DM, say, look, I'd like to connect with you. And that's perfectly fine. But we're going to begin setting it up. I will probably need to set up some kind of a channel specifically for that, a chat for that, where everything to do with Saint Maker stuff goes there into the Wolfpack chat. But you can find all that video description below. And real quick, before we move on, actually, you know what? People are like, well, what's the Saint Maker? What's the Saint Maker? Well, I'll show you real quick a video of the Saint Maker. We're going to be maybe doing a new one. I'm not sure. I gotta look at the intro pack again and go through. We're going to have a lot of different promotionals that we're going to use for them. This is going to be kind of a playground, sandbox for the Saint Maker. We're going to have a good time over here working with them. And so you're going to be seeing a lot more of that. But in the meantime, let's go ahead. I'll play this and we'll be right back right after this. Don't go anywhere. And check this out, seriously. And imagine this in your life, okay? Imagine this in your life. And imagine, how this can help you. Are you a business person? Are you somebody trying to do a really good job with your life, trying to structure it, but you find yourself, like me, all over the map, right? I'm a flighty guy. I'm all over the place, right? I'm doing this, and I'm doing that, and I'm doing this, and I'm all over. And my wife is like, Jeremiah, you forgot about, this appointment, or you needed to make a phone call over here. I'm still waiting for you to clean up this room. And so there's numerous things. This not only helps you with that, but it even helps you with things like examination of conscience, knowing every single day, knowing ahead of time exactly what feast day it is in both the traditional and in the ordinary form, so both calendars. And it also has examination of conscience. It has all these things, ideas on how to plan out your life, how to look ahead through the year, right, to make long-term plans. What are habits and things that you struggle with? There's so much there, and we'll talk about that. But real quick, so make sure when you're watching this, make sure to say, how would that apply to me? And if it's something that applies to you, then join me, because it applies to me too. So join me in this. And at the end, you'll see that there's a promo code that if you put that in, you can save some money and also, of course, support the show. So we'll be right back right after this message. Can a personal planner really make you a saint? Not by itself. But in our day and age of addictive apps and glowing screens, we're bombarded by constant distraction, and our quest for sainthood often takes a backseat. The Saint Maker is the first high-performance planner for the spiritual life, made by faithful Catholics for faithful Catholics. It's a work of genius, really, fusing the wisdom of the saints with the science of personal productivity. It's rigorous, but sainthood is tough, and most of us need help organizing our time, our work, our leisure, and our devotion, because that can help you become a saint. The Saint Maker is elegant, fits in your purse or briefcase, and is a perfect companion for your missal, Bible, or rosary. Published 4 times per year, each season includes daily planning pages, feast days, and devotions for both forms of the liturgical calendar, goal-setting pages, confession journals, and more. It's why the Saint Maker is used by hardworking Catholics like CEO of Sock Religious Scott Williams, best-selling author Sam Guzman, YouTubers like Amber Schneider, a Catholic wife Dina Barca and Brian Holdsworth, and priests like Father Corey Stitcha. Try the Saint Maker out, and if you decide that it's not for you, you can send it back for a full refund within 90 days. So go right now. Find your life planner at thesaintmaker.com. Quantities are limited though, so head on over to thesaintmaker.com to order yours and to start your Saint Maker journey today. You gotta do it. You gotta do it, and check out that right down below, PaleocratDiaries. Of course, you can put in the promo code. I think it's just Paleocrat. That's what I think it is. And speaking of Paleocrat, right there is the PaleocratDiaries alert system. It's letting you know that we are about to enter the octagon of human history. We're about to enter the octagon of church history to talk about all these different beliefs and systems, these groups that challenge, dare in fact, to challenge Christ the King. It's what they do. And we've been going through a whole bunch of them. We started with the Ronald Knox Enthusiasm series. We went through all the different groups, Revivalism, Wesley, Zinzendorf. That was a fun one, Count Zinzendorf. The Quakers, the Shakers, the Jumpers. We talked about them. They really irritated John Wesley. We talked about Jansenism, Quietism, Donatism. Montanism, all the way back to the Corinthian letters. And then we decided, hey, we had so much fun doing this that we decided we need to keep on going. We needed to pick up where Ronald Knox left off. So we did. We began with the serpent handlers, okay? To make a difference, because we're going to be facing cults, right? Not just enthusiasms, but full-blown cults. And I said, how do we make this transition? How do we learn the distinction? So we started with the serpent handlers. Right from there, new apostolic movement. Talking about the people claiming being apostles, modern apostles and prophets, birthing in the spirit. We talked about that. Okay, we talked about all these different groups. We talked about Jehovah's Witnesses, the Word of Faith movement, and now we are on to Joseph Smith and his Mormons. So make sure if you've got any instrument at all, we've got already right now shofars, we've got xylophones, kazoos, didgeridoos, snare drums, electric guitars all over the globe, shouting out to the north, the south, the east, and the west. The PaleocratDiaries is on the air. You got to make sure, send this link out. Go be a click-clacktivist for the show. It's a worthy endeavor, believe me. It's a worthy endeavor. Go on to Facebook, go on to Instagram, go on to Twitter, wherever you happen to be, and make sure to share this link and say, you got to tune in right now. Let's get that concurrent viewer number bumping up. And make sure, join in the comment section, especially, look, if you're a Mormon and you get upset about something, let us know. In fact, you can end up emailing the show and talking with your boy. We might even have you on the show. So you got to make sure to do that, of course, at PaleocratDiaries.com. Simple as that. Simple as that. Alrighty, before we move on real fast, make sure the patrons. There are a bunch of patrons that have been awesome and very patient with me. And part of the deal with them is that I wanted to be able to give screenshots of the show. The problem is I was sharing screenshots, lots and lots and lots of them from the book. But I want people to buy the book. And I don't, as a writer myself, I started thinking, is this, copyright stuff? I don't want to, I try to always cite my sources all the time. I have a journalistic background. That's what I went to school for. I went to journalism school. So I take journalistic ethics and expectations very seriously. And I thought, I got to come up with something else for them. And we do a lot. And I really encourage them. If you're supporting the show, I'm trying to create a lot of things, not just the live shows, but also behind the scenes. We do Q&As after every single show. We do a Q&A after the show over on Telegram, link in the description below. We do that too. And we do live chats. So we talk about apologetics, theology, philosophy, history, debates, reviewing different debates. We've had movie nights where we watch movies together. We've had pizza parties. I mean, literally, popping open a beer, eating some pizza together, talking for hours at a time over on Telegram. But I still need to do things unique and particular to the patrons, even if it's just simply that they get early access to all those things. And so, one of the things is I said that we would do calls, right? That we'd be able to do that, especially for the $25 group. I said, I want to be able to do it so that if you want to connect with me and you want to ask further questions, if you just want to talk, if you have things on your mind, or if you want to be in group chats, I'm open to all these. So please, if you're a patron right now, make sure, number one, if you're a patron and you're not joining us over on Telegram, I really encourage you to. Because really, it's for everybody, but it's especially for you. You've supported the show in a different way. You're not just participating. Everybody does their own thing. We have a prayer group. We have all that stuff. And we're revamping the book club. And I think some of the books I'm going to go through are going to be about apologetics. I've been asked to do videos about atheism on meaning of Catholics. So we're going to do apologetics regarding that. I'm also going to do a series on political polytheism and do a series about presuppositional apologetics, Catholic edition, what I call the DeSalzian method of apologetics. That is going back and showing the tradition within the church, St. Irenaeus, okay, going to Athanasius, St. John of Damascus, St. Francis de Sales, Frank Sheed. Okay, there's all different individuals who've used this methodology. In fact, it was a great conversation I had with one of the guys in the chat, Ethan, and he was reading from Frank Sheed talking about Catholics view things in the context of the entire system, and you wouldn't know one part, and you use the example of eyes on a plate. Somebody had eyes on this silver platter. You would not know what these things were. You know them in context with other things, and that we know them within a system, that it's an entire view of it. And I said, that is the exact same thing that I've been saying, and in fact, almost the exact same words. I'm echoing them. So, but yet, by and large, the majority of people who do apologetics in the Catholic world, not only are they not presuppositional in their methodology, right? But more than that, they've allowed Reformed people to put their flag in an apologetic that didn't begin with them, just like they do with essentials of the faith, just like they do with the Bible. You look and you say, when you hear the phrase Bible-believing Christian, do you think about Catholics? If you go online and you just look up Bible, right, are you going to see a majority Catholic stuff? Are you going to see a majority Protestant stuff? What's out there? They're living off of hand-me-downs, okay, is what's happening. And they're good at branding themselves that way. But that doesn't mean it's true. And it doesn't mean it ought to be that way. And so far as I know, and I may be wrong, I am the most vocal proponent of Catholic presuppositionalism online. And so we're going to be talking about that in a series. We're going to be comparing it and bringing. I'd like to bring on people. I'd like to talk to Trent Horn, to be quite frank, because I think that it's no good when the only example you have is going and speaking to other people from other faiths that you're debating for other reasons, and not understanding that system within the Catholic understanding of it would not have a problem with natural theology. For example, wouldn't even have a problem with using 5 proofs, so long as it's couched within an idea that you are enthroning Christ in your heart from the beginning, and that the idea of neutrality, we can debate that. That's a methodology question. And people are able to debate that. And so I think that's one of the things that we're going to do. But that may at least begin with patrons. We'll see, though. All right, moving on. And sorry for that really long introduction. That took a long time. I didn't plan on that. So we may go like an hour and a half today. We'll see. Instead of an hour. Yeah, because I've only got 40 minutes left if I'm doing an hour. Yeah, people are like, I always get the people in the comments are like, oh, yeah, the show started at 40 minutes. And I'm like, I'm actually grateful for that, though, because then people, if they want to just go to the show, they can do it. So, all right, we've been talking so far about the Kingdom of the Cults. Walter Martin, this is updated as a general editor by Ravi Zacharias, both of them Protestants. And this has been an issue with me where going through this, I don't mind using books written by Protestants that are apologetic in nature, so long as I'm able to, and I've done this, to say, okay, this is where the distinctive would be different for us. And it helps us to understand not only the weaknesses in their apologetic method, like we've talked about, Walter Martin constantly saying, well, these people are outside of Orthodox Christianity, but yet his ecclesiology, right? His ecclesiology makes it impossible for one group to declare, or any of them other than just an arbitrary convention, to declare for the universe, for all people at all times, what in fact is dogma. And it doesn't work to simply say sola scriptura, and he ought to have known better. In fact, I think a lot of them might actually in some ways, because, you can say, well, it's self-attesting, and you go, yes, if it was out in the desert alone, the Bible, it'd be self-attesting if nobody was around. That's not even the question. The question is, what is it when you approach it? And you have people who approach it with different views. How do you settle that score? And if everybody says, well, go to the Bible, they're like, well, that's what led us to the debate in the first place. We disagree. We're using different verses. And so you just, well, let's go back. And it's like Beautiful Mind. I can fix my brain. I'm the smartest guy, one of the smartest guys in the world, John Nash. I don't need the medication. I can use my brain to fix it. And they're like, but your brain is the problem, right? So the very thing, now, I'm not saying that the Bible's a broken brain of John Nash. What I'm saying is the idea of going back to the very thing that is, people are divided over this, right? And they're having differences of opinion, disagreements on various things, that you say, okay, what do we do in that situation? How do we settle that score? Do we just keep debating? Come on! Believe what I'm saying! Don't you see? I have the bestest interpretation ever! Yeah, it doesn't work. Doesn't work. You can reductio ad absurdum the daylight side of that. And that's why in the future we're going to be talking, even in future episodes, rather than emphasizing so much of, well, the Bible says this about the Mormons, and we will still talk about that. But instead of limiting ourselves to it, we're going to actually go and talk about Mormon epistemology. We're going to talk about Mormon metaphysics. Because in a weird way, they're a lot like the Nation of Islam when it comes to their metaphysics. When it comes to even their concept of time, history, movement, if you want to go into the unmoved mover stuff, the idea of movement, right? When you have an infinite regress, right? Even a first cause, is there one? What's holding everything together? Intelligence. Is it God or is it something other than God? And how is that thing not God? What do you do if the intelligence of the universe submits to God because the intelligence sees within God a perfection of this, but he had to attain it? So he's someone who can change, in fact. And you can bank on the idea that, well, I don't think he's ever going to do it. I mean, he's never going to do it. He's settled. He's good. But in that way, in a weird way, right? How would the intelligence not be God instead of Elohim? But we're going to begin, as we do each and every time, we're going to begin with a background. Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, okay? Historical perspective. The Mormons, oh man, I need better light in here. The Mormons, as they're most commonly called, are divided into two major groups. And by the way, just so that people know, see if I can read better with my glasses off here. So, if there's at any point an issue where, especially Mormons, or even if you're a former Mormon or you're not a Mormon, but you may know something, if there's ever time where something is developed beyond what is said in this book, or if this book is in any way inaccurate, feel free to let us know. And not just that you say, well, that's a difference of opinion, right? But we're talking like Jehovah's Witnesses made a change between the publication of the book and now, about the days they meet or how frequently or what it's about and how many you go to. They made certain changes, okay? But I cited the structure of it from the book. So that was something brought to my attention, the Wolfpack chat. Oh, yeah. Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints with headquarters in Salt Lake City, Utah. And the Community of Christ, formerly known before the year 2000 as the Reorganized Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, with headquarters in Independence, Missouri. So you right from the gate, you've got a couple different groups, but by and large, I mean, look, when we talk about Mormons, we're really talking, to be frank, we're talking about the Salt Lake City group. I mean, that's what we're doing. The Community of Christ, which rejects the name Mormon, is briefly reviewed in the chapter, but there can be little doubt that this is composed of a zealous group of dedicated people. They irritate the Utah Mormon Church consistently by pointing out court decisions have established their claim that they are the true church, and Utah, in fact, is schismatic. So they've got kind of their own Protestant group, right? But they say, no, we're the real ones. We are the true ones. You are not. Okay? So they've already got that. And I don't know in my own life, I don't know if I've ever actually met anyone from the Independence, Missouri group. Have you? If you have, let us know in the comments section. Yeah, actually, speaking of the comments section, I'll go ahead and I'll put that up right now. Why not just do that? There we go. There we go. The missionary effort of the Mormon Church is seldom matched by any other religious endeavor. The young Mormon children are taught from primary age onward that it is their duty to the church to serve a mission following high school. The entire missionary force is broken down into the following percentages. Now, this is as the writing of the book. 75% single males, 19% single females, 6% married couples. But they like to emphasize the fact that it's not just men, right? You do have women. And in fact, I know this because I was in the Navy and I was attending Mormon services, okay? So I was attending Mormon services. And when we did that, there were a lot of ladies who were there who were missionettes, right? So I got to see communion service. I got to see baptism. I was actually behind the scenes for that. So I got to see the people come in. I got to be right behind the baptismal area there with that. And every single week they would have meetings. So we'd get together and for 10, 15 minutes, we would talk about Mormonism, right? And get to ask questions and stuff. Membership of the Mormon Church now increases every year, right? At an average of about 300,000 conversions and 75,000 children's baptisms. So you're talking about a church that is literally booming. It is. It's one of the few that continues to grow. It does. And they put an enormous amount of time, effort, energy, money into advancing ideas, right? Banking on their big points, the things that truly matter to them. And we have to give them credit. In fact, there are a number of things about them, and I'm glad that Walter Martin mentions this, that are in fact admirable. And I think that as Catholic people, we can look at that and really reevaluate ourselves and ask, look, just like we do with snake handlers, right? It doesn't mean that what they're saying is true, but there is a value to witnessing somebody who's doing a number of otherwise very good things, living an otherwise excellent life, striving for excellence, striving for equality in their life, whether it's family, individual, business, right? Even politics, the kind of engagement that they have in this world, genuinely endeavoring to make it a better place. And in a secular age like our own, we can say in many ways they are helping with that, right? Which is why it's so subtle in the deception. We see this with whether it's with Mitt Romney, Glenn Beck, right? There's a whole bunch of these guys, more Mormons than any other religion on the what is it, the who's who? I mean, you're talking some serious ballers here. This is no joke. And you have to give praise and credit where it's due. It's good for them and it's good for you, by the way. Okay. So they have a birth rate of 28.1 per thousand in contrast to the average 15.9. That I am assuming that it even went down from there in just in average in the United States. Mormons are to preserve their bodies always in the best of health and are cautioned over the use of tobacco and alcohol, and even drinking tea, coffee, and other caffeine-bearing drinks, such as Coca-Cola. They're really big about tithing, right? Requires all Temple Mormons and requests members to meet the biblical 1/10 of their gross income. And so they use that money maybe more efficiently and effectively than maybe any other religion on the planet. It's true. Even Jeremiah films, interestingly enough, the one that made the Mormon cartoon, okay, where it shows Mormon Jesus, and the devil, and there's a fight in heaven, and it shows the people go from angelic to looking black and stuff. That cartoon, that's embedded within a longer documentary, and that documentary really is in the tradition of the anti-cult movements, where you got to kind of wonder to some degree how much of it's true. And it really does require you to go back and look deeper and not just rely so heavily on he said, she said. The reader should bear in mind also that the Mormons put this money to good use in the expansion of their church, a truth borne out by the fact that the church is rapidly expanding its real estate holdings, both for commercial and ecclesiastical purposes. In addition to their regular tithing, the Mormon Church also encourages what is termed fast offerings. This unusual practice involves the giving up of 2 meals on the first Sunday of each month, the price of which is turned over to the church as a voluntary contribution. So it's not just a free will offering, like saying, look, I'm gonna give a second offering in the church. This is an additional thing. This is saying I'm not only giving extra money, which is a sacrifice in and of itself, but I'm going to do it by a kind of mortification, in fact, a discipline, an intermittent fast. Mormonism, then, is not one of the cults tending to appeal merely to the uneducated, okay? But instead, it exalts education, which results in huge amounts of printed propaganda flowing from its presses in the millions of copies annually. They also build excellent temples, although I would beg to differ on the inside, at least from what has been made known. People sharing pictures and stuff. I'm kind of like, nah, I don't know about that architecture. But the outside, I've been there. I've been to Salt Lake City. By the way, I went during that part of the year where you actually go to Salt Lake, and it's nasty. It smells terrible, and there was all these bugs all over the place. It's gross. Yeah. Let's see. Temples are forbidden to Gentiles. They have a strong emphasis on education. Mormons believe in sports, right? Hobbies, dramatics, music, homemaking courses for prospective brides, dances, and dramatic festivals. In fact, they make some excellent music with choirs. I have it not only on. I not only have it digitally, I have it on record. I have old school records of it. Mormonism does all that is humanly possible to make the church organization a home away from home for Mormon children and young people. And its low level of juvenile delinquency is in a marked proportion among Mormons, testifying to the success of church-centered programs. It's totally true. Their influence in the United States, vast. We already mentioned that. Totally vast, right? Let's see here. Let me get back to this thing. Let me go back. Here we go. All right. And so you've got all this stuff. You got the church organization. We'll talk about that at a different time. Okay. We'll talk about that at a different time. On the next show. So I'll dog ear this. Let's see. We'll talk about that. But we're going to talk about early Mormon church history. Okay. Right here, but before we do, the last thing about the Mormons, right? And saying, look, this is to be fair. To be fair about it. Say, the average active Mormon is usually marked by many sound moral traits. Okay? He's generally amiable. Generally. Almost always hospitable and extremely devoted to his family and to the teachings of his church. It's sad to say, however, the great majority of Mormons are in almost total ignorance of the shady historical and theological sources of their religion. True. And you can see this even in street evangelism. What is it, apologia? Is that the place? Let me get this turned up a little bit. I don't know why it's so quiet. Yeah, so there's this group, Apologia, that makes these videos, Protestant group, presuppositional, but they'll go out there and they will talk to Mormons on the street. And sometimes I think it goes on a really long time. I think, some people try to win everything right there on the spot, right? Not realizing that you're planting a seed in this, okay? Which you get to this place like, look, I'm trying to really hard get you right now, and that's good. That's a good ambition, but sometimes it kind of comes off a little bit pushy. It kind of irritates the folks pretty badly. You've done a great deal already within 20 minutes. If you're pushing it to an hour, at that point you got the camera rolling. Yeah, don't know about that, buddy. Don't know about that. Right? It's still good work, though. Still good work. But you can see in that so often where you can ask people, missionaries, doesn't matter, ask them questions, and there's a big brr, bomb, I don't know. You should talk to an elder about that. You should maybe go to a source. Now, that's a humble admission. And we admit that here, that not everybody needs to be a scholar. But when you're out beating on doors, it's one thing to say, be the kind of person that lives a living epistle apologetic, right? That your life is, in fact, shining forth the truth of the gospel and providing reasons, constant reasons for the hope that you have. And the idea that you apply it to every area of your life, no matter what you're doing, no matter where you are, no matter what are you a lawyer? Are you a doctor? Are you working at a gas station? Doesn't matter. You working at the donut shop? Doesn't matter. You are a living epistle all the time, shining forth in this dark world more and more as it gets darker and darker. But the idea of going door to door, dong, 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 and doing that, you ought to have a greater amount of preparation in that regard to be able to answer certain things, to anticipate the criticisms. That's what we do here. I strongly discourage people from getting involved in apologetics unless they've done their homework. I'm talking apologetics in the way that we're doing apologetics here. Okay? Early Mormon history. Born in Sharon, Vermont, December 23, 1805. Fourth child of Lucy and Joseph Smith, the future Mormon prophet entered the world with the proverbial 2 strikes against him, okay? In the person of his father and his environment. And why is that? And this is a bummer. This isn't, and remember, when we talk about the individuals, it's important when talking about any group at all to talk about their founders. I think it's insufficient if you don't, right? We must, in fact, talk about them. On the other hand, to use arguments like, well, he went to jail, right? He was accused by authorities of this and that. So was Jesus. So was the Apostle Paul. So was St. Peter. So we have to limit that and recognize it, but we have to also talk about it and talk about how these homeboys grew up. So Joseph Smith spent much of his time digging for imaginary buried treasure. Former Mormon historian Dr. D. Michael Quinn has thoroughly documented the fact that both Joseph Smith Sr. and Joseph Smith Jr. were avid treasure seekers. In his book entitled Early Mormonism and the Magic Worldview, Quinn writes, Joseph Smith, quote, Joseph Smith, the founding prophet and president of the new church, organized on 6 April 1830, had unquestionably participated in treasure seeking, right, and seer stone divination, and had apparently also used divining rods, talismans, and implements of ritual magic. So you have a guy, and look, people come from all different backgrounds, right? People come from all different backgrounds. They say, look, yeah, okay, so he was into divining rods. He was into seer stones. Homeboy was looking in his hat. Seer stones. All right, hold on. We're going to look for buried treasure. Hey, Joey, do you know where all this is? Yeah, hold on a second. Yeah, I'm looking. What are you doing? I'm looking at the stones. I'm going to find out. And you're like, oh, yeah, okay, dope. Yeah, okay, we need to go over here to this place. Start digging. It was wicked bad. Wicked stupid, by the way. In the past, Mormon historians have avoided every indication that Joseph Smith owned a peepstone or seer stone. Dr. Quinn's aforementioned book includes photographs of actual seer stones owned by Joseph Smith. It should be noted that D. Michael Quinn was excommunicated from the LDS Church in 1993 after refusing to keep silent about his unflattering research. So that's one of those things, you start finding stuff and you're like, hey, look, a lot of these critics are saying that he had some seer stones. We have some seer stones right here, some physical proof of it. And they're like, how dare you? How dare you talk about that? Don't you dare. Do you know what kind of disrepute that would bring? Oh, I'm sure. I'm sure it would. Especially, because you guys have been saying that was fake. Isn't that a problem? If you didn't say it was fake, it'd be like, well, hey, look, it's something we never knew. You could do the apologetic that it wouldn't matter. It's easier to say that it wouldn't matter or he was into some messed up junk. But they didn't. No, it was rather instead, no, never happened. That never happened. Never, ever, ever. And so you find out, and what happens? Well, that's a lie you got to cover up. That's a lie you cannot afford to tell the truth about. This newer honesty among Mormon historians is appearing in other books, like the revision of The Story of the Latter-day Saints by J.B. Allen and G.M. Leonard, where they discuss Smith's, quote, youthful experiences with treasure seeking. Yeah. So homeboy had some experiences with treasure seeking. The mother of the future prophet was as much as her husband the product of the era and her environment, given as she was to extreme religious views and belief in the most trivial superstitions. So he's raised in this environment. He's raised in this environment of cuckoo crazy stuff, right? So he didn't have to go to Quackadoodle University. He was raised, in fact, his home was Quackadoodle U. That's what it was. It was the HQ. The HQ of Quackadoodle U was his house. So in a way, you almost can't blame the poor guy. Say, look, if you're raised in a snake handling church and you're snake handling, that's, the culpability is different than if you were raised, let's say, a Roman Catholic or Presbyterian, and you grew up and in college you just decide you're going to become a snake handler. It's a different world, isn't it? Again, honesty would have been better. Lucy Smith, later in life, she, quote, authored a book entitled Biographical Sketches of Joseph Smith and His Progenitors for Many Generations. By the way, don't you love the titles of old books like that? they're like so long. And they're really formal. They're like, yes, this is in his progenitors. And you're like, oh, yes. Did you see that? Yes, that's a hot book. Just flying off the shelves. Yeah. Let's see here. Yeah. So, okay. It incurred the enduring wrath of Brigham Young. So Brigham Young, he's like the Melanchthon to Luther. He's the follow-up guy. He's the next batter up. So he comes after Joseph Smith. He did not like Mama Smith's book on the grounds that it contained, quote, many mistakes. How dare you? How would you know about his upbringing? How would you even know, lady? No. We know better. You know nothing about his upbringing. In 1820, he was allegedly the recipient of a marvelous vision in which God the Father and God the Son materialized and spoke to young Smith as he prayed in a neighboring wood. The prophet records the incident in great detail in his book, The Pearl of Great Price, History 1 through 25, wherein he reveals that the two personages took a rather dim view of the Christian church, and for that matter of the world at large, and announced that a restoration of true Christianity was needed, and that he, Joseph Smith Jr., had been chosen to launch the new dispensation. So he's like, look, I was out in some woods. Two personages showed up. You had Mormon Jesus. You had Elohim. They roll up in here, and they talk to me, and they're very upset about Christianity around the world. And it's gone out of control. We've got to restore it to its true position. All these years later, and I choose you to do it. Already we're dealing with the problem of extraordinary mission. Already. And you say there, what's the basis of restorationism? Of course, they've got to throw it back into the very thing that's often contested by the people surrounding them, and that would be the Bible or Bible times. Which is why so many denominations are like, my church was founded in 33 AD. And you're like, dude, were all you guys? You talking to, the Church of God Pentecostal or, PCUSA? I actually know when you guys were founded and stuff. Oh. By the way, in the comments, Christine says, you're so awesome, Jeremiah. You crack me up. I pray God forever bless you and your wonderful family. By the way, if you want, thank you so much. I appreciate it, and I know you will, by the way. I know you will. I'm always glad to see you. If you're in the comments and you would like to ask a question, two things. Number one, I should have said it earlier. Number one, do the little @ symbol, meaning of Catholic. And if somebody does it and it's from a phone and it doesn't show up or whatever, or a computer and it doesn't show up, and somebody sees it, if they could just repost it so that I can see, it makes it stand out. Because otherwise, and I'll show you, otherwise, it's just that. Right here. Okay, so Kevin Beck, he says, hitting the snare in North Georgia. Okay, so you've got that, but you see the orange there? See that orange square? The orange square over there that says meaning of Catholic? That allows me to see. Something that stands out particularly for me. Otherwise, it looks like this. Oh, and Angela Banish, that's my wife. My mega hot half Korean beauty queen wife. Make sure to say hi to her. Make sure also, of course, to pray for the Flanders family. And I should have actually said this. I didn't know if anybody else already had. But just pray for them. They lost there was a miscarriage. And so very devastating. It happened on Monday. It's been already put out on Patreon, already put on Telegram. I'm assuming also on Facebook. So I just make sure to keep them in prayer. But anyway, so you've got, all this. I agree with Jeremiah. So I can see sometimes, but that's just a lot of words. So if you want something specifically to be addressed, number one, put in @ meaning of Catholic. Number two, you can make sure to go to the Q&A after show. That's a live show right after this is over. And that is in the description below. So make sure to go ahead and do that. All right, moving on. Let's see. Mormon apostle Bruce R. McConkie, sorry. Bruce R. McConkie, on page 512 through 513 of his book, Mormon Doctrine, writes, quote, Mormonism is Christianity. Christianity is Mormonism. Mormons are true Christians. So to them, they're making a claim that is, in fact, a lot like the claims made by Jehovah's Witnesses and Roman Catholics. Okay, that they are the church. They are the fullness of it. You may be outside that and still be called a Christian, but only to the extent that you may, in fact, agree or that you'd be ignorant of the claims of the Catholic Church. And so there's a similar thing going on there. And just for clarification, peep stones, right? Peak stones or seer stones. These are supposedly magical rocks, which, when placed in a hat and partially darkened, allegedly reveal lost items and buried treasure. Divining rods were sticks that were supposed to lead to treasure or water. So you've at least seen, I'm assuming you've at least seen on cartoons, you have seen the divining rods, right? Bugs Bunny, and he's got this stick, he's like, wow, and he's being dragged around, right? All over the place. Yosemite Sam being dragged all over the place, trying to get himself some, find buried treasure, find water, and it's like magnetic on the stick. Whoa, it's leading me there. Everybody are closing their eyes. So you got to imagine, homeboy was into that. Homeboy was into throwing those magical stones into a hat and saying, I see it, guys. I see it. Powerful stuff. I know right where the treasure is. Yeah, the well finders. Joe Blow says, yes, the well finders. Yeah, totally. He was a well finder. Smith could not have been too moved by the heavenly vision, for he shortly took up once again the habit of digging for treasure along with his father and brother, who were determined to unearth treasure by means of peepstones and divining rods, or just plain digging. So he's kind of like Robert's Lairdon. Robert's Lairdon, watching Laverne and Shirley. He's Laverne and Shirleying it up. He's at home watching some, Nick at Night or something. And all of a sudden, Jesus comes into his house. What's up, homie? He brings him in and he says, I'm going to take you on a magical ride. And he transports him, zoink, boing, all the way up to heaven. And Robert's Lairdon is now up in heaven, rolling with the Lord. And going through all sorts of stuff. They're splashing each other. Yay! They're splashing each other in the river of life. It was awesome. And they even went into I guess there's a bathroom or something, a medicine cabinet. And there was a Holy Ghost overdose pill that had Roberts straight tripping. Best drug in the world. Holy Ghost overdose pill. And then he goes and he gets baptized by the Lairdon Jesus. Boing, sploosh, baptizes him. And the Lord's like, not only am I baptizing you. So I don't think he was ever baptized like here. Right? That's like his only baptism. Supposedly, right? So he gets baptized in heaven. And the Lord is like, I'm sending you out as an apostle to the nations. You're going to change everything, Robert Lairdon. And what does Robert Lairdon do? He gets zoinked back to earth. And he doesn't write anything for a while. He's just kind of living his life, doing his thing. Dude, that's when you say, I don't believe you. I don't believe you. There's no way that you went through this thing, going up into heaven, Holy Ghost overdose pill, splashing in the river of life with the Lord, getting baptized by Lairdon Jesus, being commissioned as an apostle of the end times to all the nations, to bring the nations back, and you go home and you just keep on watching your Laverne and Shirley. And for years of your life. Same thing with Joseph Smith. In later years, he greatly regretted these superstitious expeditions of his youth. In fact, he went on record to deny that he'd ever been a money digger. So there's all sorts of problems with this, right? The main source for promoting skepticism where the veracity of the prophet's explanation is concerned, however, because he's like, no, I wasn't involved in any magical junk. I wasn't involved in that. I did go digging, that's true. But I tried to dissuade them. I tried, no, don't do that. Don't look for the secret treasure. Oh, he starts getting sweaty talking about it. Don't do it. He looks over, he sees, a stick on the ground. He's looking and sweat's dripping down the side of his temple. Oh, those good old days. Oh, man. But the main source of it, skepticism where the veracity of the prophet's explanation is concerned, however, is no less an authority than, his mom. Because she describes the very same incidents. But she said that the guy that was working with him, Steele, quote, came for Joseph on account of having heard that he possessed certain means by which he could discern things invisible to the natural eye. That's kind of weird because that's not the only time that he claims to be able to do that. He also claims to be able to do, the exact same thing when translating the Book of Mormon. No, what a coinkydink. There's also other things he does that are central to his entire system, to his entire identity and history, to the claims of all the stuff he's ever done. And what is it? Well, that he basically had kind of some stones. He had this special spectacle. Man, what does that sound like? Oh, it sounds like the very thing you've been accused of. The very thing that your mom said you did. Man. Let's see. Must also be remembered that Joseph Smith Sr., in an interview later published in Historical Magazine, May 1870, clearly stated that the prophet had been a peepstone enthusiast. He was a peepstoner. He was peeping it up. He was a peeping Joe. That's what he was. It's the Peeping Joe treasure show. A treasure digger in his youth. And further, that he'd also told fortunes and located lost objects by means of a peepstone and allegedly supernatural powers therein. Substantiating Joseph's father's account of his rather odd activities is the testimony of Reverend Dr. John A. Clark. After exhaustive research into Smith's family's own neighborhood. So you eventually have people that are like, look, Mormonism's getting big. It's making some crazy claims. So they're like, look, we got to investigate this junk. So you end up having Reverend Dr. John A. Clark. He goes in, and from his book, what is it? Gleanings by the Way. Quote, Joe used to be usually their guide, talking about going on treasure hunts, putting into a hat a peculiar stone he had, through which he looked to decide where they should begin to dig. The proceedings of a court hearing dated March 20th, New York versus Joseph Smith, revealed that Smith, quote, had a certain stone, which he had occasionally looked at to determine where hidden treasures and bowels of the earth were, and had looked for Mr. Stole, my apologies, several times. The hearing ruled the defendant guilty, in fact, of money digging. But it was several of the occult practices, in fact, that Joseph Smith was involved in the 1820s, okay? So there were all sorts of problems with this. All sorts of problems, especially as you go later, as you get later in life and you start to confront the tablets. And yeah, so, someone in the comments asked if Mormons are Christians and do they believe in the Trinity? No, they do not. No, they do not. Their metaphysic is materialistic. They don't believe, like, it's a lot like, and we'll talk about this more in future episodes. It's a lot like Nation of Islam. It's immanent. All of it. In fact, God's like part of the universe. It's just, he doesn't transcend. He's not a spirit in that sense. Because you will be like him, right? In a body, in bodily form. In 1827, Smith claimed to receive golden plates. Oh, this is a big one. This is a big one. Let's see. received golden plates upon which the Book of Mormon is allegedly to have been written. Shortly after this historic find, unearthed in the hill of Cumorah near Palmyra, New York, Smith began to, quote, translate the, quote, Reformed Egyptian. And just so people know about the Reformed Egyptian, because that might sound a little weird to you, believe me, it sounds weird to everyone who's ever studied human languages ever. Because, well, there's a number of reasons, but I think that the most important one is because it's fake. It's not real. Even the description of what he describes it as, reformed as in a whole bunch of characters from a bunch of different languages smashed into one mega language, that's childish, by the way. That's like literally having a book of other languages and spelling your name, right, like Jeremiah, using a J from Hebrew, an E from Greek, right? In R, going to any other language in all of history. It's entering some hieroglyphs in there. Yeah, Reformed Egyptian is an undocumented language, never seen by any leading Egyptologist, or a philologist who has ever been consulted on the problem. However, of course, they still maintain that Joseph Smith, that's exactly what it was. Oh, totally. One day we're going to find it, believe me. We're going to keep looking. You're going to find it. And it's amazing because it's weird. Sometimes, when you use lies to provide substance to what you're doing, you eventually get found. I mean, look, what you do in darkness is going to be revealed in light, okay? It's just going to happen. And so he goes out and he says, there's the story that, they bring this manuscript over to a leading a person studying human languages and present it to him. And that this man looked at it and was like, oh, this is amazing. It's the best translation I've ever seen. Number one, the dude wrote later and said, I never said that. In fact, I told that guy he's getting totally hosed. I warned him, said, get out of there. But somebody's trying to take your money, dude. An ignorant farmer. Trying to take your money. This guy is a scamster, whoever told you that. But more than that, it's self-refuting. Why? Because nobody on the planet knew Reformed Egyptian. That's the claim of the Mormon Church. Nobody would know it. So how would that guy say it's the best translation? No one's ever seen this language before. You needed a special kind of monocle in order to see it and translate it properly. And so we brought it to an expert on languages, and he saw it and said, that's the best translation of this magical phony language I've ever seen. That may be true, but it must have been dripping with sarcasm. Yes, man. Yes. Yeah, in the comments here, Wally Dibble, and I saw another angel fly in the midst of heaven, having the everlasting gospel to preach unto them that dwell on earth, and to every nation and kindred and tongue and people. Not entirely sure where you want to go with it. Yeah. And of course, right, so you have a number of problems. These are hieroglyphics inscribed thereupon by means of an Urim and Thummim. So that, again, what's the Urim and Thummim? They are a miraculous spectacles. This guy literally was monocling this up. He was literally monocling this thing up. Okay, let's see if we can go ahead and talk about it here. Let's see. Okay. So he's over there with his monocle. He's checking it out. He's like, okay, I got my monocle on. This is definitely helping me. I'm able to figure this out. I've got the magic monocle. Now, it may have been, one that's like the whole face. That's a scrunch his face. His chin and his forehead. Trying to get it to stick. But either way, magic spectacles. Magic spectacles. Yeah, it was inscribed thereupon by means of the Urim and Thummim, a type of miraculous spectacles, which the angel Moroni had the foresight to provide for the budding seer. So the angel Moroni is like, look, you've got to sport this bad boy. You've got to use it. Put on that monocle stat, because nobody knows this language because it's fake and stuff. During that period when Joseph was translating the plates, one Oliver Cowdery an itinerant schoolteacher, visited Smith at the home of his father-in-law, who after some months, for the sake of his daughter, here, I'll turn this way. Let's see if we can get it even better. Okay. Let's see. Who after some months, for the sake of his daughter, had received Joseph into his home, where he was duly converted to the prophet's religion, and soon after became one of the several scribes who faithfully wrote down what Joseph said the plates read. In spite of the fact that he and Smith were separated by a curtain during the translation. So he's not translating jack. He's just simply writing down whatever the dude with the magic monocle on the other side of the barrier is saying is on these magical plates. On May 15th, 1829, John the Baptist, in Poison, was speedily dispatched by Peter, James, and John to the humble state of Pennsylvania with orders to confer the Aaronic priesthood on Joe and Oliver. So, wow, man. Wow. John the Baptist was dispatched. So, like, who sent you? Peter, James, and John. Dang, son. Okay, what do you want us to do? I'm imparting the Aaronic priesthood on you. Oh. This amazing event is recorded in the Pearl of Great Price, following which Oliver baptized Joe and vice versa. So what, unbaptized people? Is that jumping the gun a little bit? Is that jumping the gun? Yeah. Joseph returned shortly to the home of Peter Whitmer in Fayette, New York, where he remained until, quote, the translation from the plates was completed and the Book of Mormon published and copyrighted in the year 1830. That was a real bummer year, by the way. Wasn't that the year that Schofield also, not Schofield, was that the year that the vision from that wackadoodle lady over in England? Was it England? Where was she? Plymouth Brethren. Okay, so she was with Plymouth Brethren, and she has the vision, right, of what eventually would become the rapture. So the rapture was foisted on America in that year. There's a whole bunch of nonsense in 1830. And the Book of Mormon, that's one of them. On April 6th of the same year, the prophet, in company with his brothers, Hiram and Samuel, Oliver Cowdery, and David and Peter Whitmer Jr., officially founded the new religious society. Yeah. And of course, we'll talk. Let me go ahead and put this on there about the structure of their church. We can talk about the structure of their church in the Q&A after the show. Okay. So, but you have these different individuals who are there. You have a conference, right? There's a prophet, right? Called by the prophet. Missionaries were decided upon, right? That kind of thing. You had Parley Pratt converted to Mormonism, and allegedly in November, Sidney Rigdon, a powerful Campbellite preacher from Ohio, quote, saw the light, and he, quote, converted. So you have a Campbellite that's like, look, I've seen the truth. It's been opened up to me, guys. I felt the burning in the bosom. More than 100 of his congregation also joined him in this new religion. Yeah, it's like one of those things, by the way, in the comments, you may see one of the things that cultists like to do is they'll find something from the scripture. The Word of Faith does this all the time, right? And I don't know, maybe the people in the comments, the cultists in the comments section, maybe they're okay with this too. But like the idea that, if you find a practice in the Bible or something that sounds the same, or you use the same language, that it means the same thing. Like, so for one, you can talk about the Urim and Thummim from the Old Testament. And you say, well, look, the words are in the Old Testament, right? It should be upon Aaron's heart when he goes before the Lord. Yeah, okay. I got you. Did that help Aaron interpret a magical fake language that nobody knew about? Or what about this? You could have Word of Faith movement say, look, in the New Testament, we have instances where different, handkerchiefs, that kind of thing, rags and other things, even the shadow of the apostles as they're walking around, that of St. Peter, that as he's walking around, that people are being healed, things like that. And you say, hey, look, so you criticize the word of faith, fake healers, right? The word of faith, fake healers, these people, magic men, who end up saying, look, if you send $100, we're going to go ahead and we're going to send you a blessed rag. It's wiped with my sweat. And they say, well, look, here's a Bible verse where that kind of thing happens. Are you down with that? Is that sufficient for you? Or are you the kind of person that says that the Patriot Act was awesome because the word patriot is in it? And Patriot was a good movie? That logic sucks. That logic is garbage, man. Do better. Try harder. Of course, Rigdon would eventually be accused of apostasy and excommunicated in the Mormon Church in 1844. Rigdon soared to the heights of inflammatory rhetoric against the citizens of Jackson County, right? What does it say? Hold on. Missouri, which on Independence Day, 1838, he virtually challenged the entire state to do pitched battle with the Saints, who were subsequently terribly persecuted and expelled in November of 1838. So you have people from the beginning. You have people from the beginning who are part of the founding group who later on do some rather extraordinarily insane things. And that's okay. In fairness, Judas was part of the group, right? In fairness, be real. While in Missouri, Smith purchased 63 acres, which he deemed holy ground, and there marked the exact spot on which he declared that the Temple of Zion, the earthly headquarters of the kingdom of Jesus Christ, was eventually to be built. It's an interesting fact of history that one small branch of Mormonism, the Church of Christ Temple Lot, today owns that temple, right? Owns that temple site, and claims that it once refused $5 million from the Utah Church for the hallowed ground. $5 million for the Mormons ain't much, right? That's not a big claim to fame, to be quite frank. Let's see here. We won't go too much into the practice of polygamy, stuff like that, with that group. The various positions. We'll talk about that more in later on. But I want to get through at least the beginning, talking about the leaders and the people who kind of built this up. Okay? Let's see. I will say this, though, okay? So between the years of 1831 and 1844, the prophet allegedly received well over 135 direct revelations. Wow! 135 direct revelations. He's like, oh, you got to imagine in the moment. Did he have, like in that show, Chuck? Do you remember that show, Chuck? Where he, every time there was some kind of special thing going on, like he's all of a sudden, he's the Intersect. He has this special government program that's downloaded to his brain that has all the information from all the different intelligence agencies around the world. And when he sees somebody, it sparks that in his head, and he has this weird face that he does, and that makes him, aware of who this person is. Maybe they're some kind of a crazy terrorist or something. And you got to think, did he have any kind of physical actions, or was it just like downloaded? Downloaded, Lord, I got you. I'll write it down when I get the time. How did that work out with this kid? Yeah. In 1890, President Wilford Woodruff officially abolished polygamy. Again, we'll talk about polygamy more in an episode we can dedicate more time just to certain doctrinal distinctives. In 1890, President Wilford Woodruff officially abolished polygamy as a practice of the Mormon Church. Okay, there were some religious convictions going on to the Mormons. Were sacrificed for their political and economic survival. Some things you got to do what you got to do. You got to do what you got to do. And I'm curious to know, like, how do these guys, maybe because they say that you can still have, in fact, the polygamous wives in the afterlife, right? How do you do that? Is it wives, where the husbands are gone, right? And so you're like, oh, you were with another husband, but he left. Okay, you're with me. You're making my babies forever. How does that happen? Maybe they've got stuff on it. I'm not saying they don't. Duly sworn statements of neighbors of the Smith family, right, were found in the Origins, Rise, and Progress of Mormonism, and that is a classic work in 1861. Unanimous consensus that Joseph Smith Jr. was known for his habits of exaggeration and untruthfulness. By reasons of his extravagances of statement, his word was received with the least confidence by those who knew him best. He could utter the most palpable exaggeration or marvelous absurdity with the utmost apparent gravity. So the guy was a bona fide liar. The people, at least, who knew him. Now, maybe he was just convinced, and, you say, well, what are you talking about? What exactly was it that was lied about? It'd be good to go back and read this book. I strongly encourage those who are interested to go ahead and do that, by the way. Yeah, Rosemary Curry said, I live here in Salt Lake City amid the Mormons. They make sure that their members don't know the real history of Joseph Smith or Brigham Young. Yeah. That's one of those things. Isn't it just one of those things? And that's true. I mean, most cults, they don't want you to know. They don't want you to know, like, who'd you go through? Like, who's this person? Because that person, every heresy arc, and we talked about that in the Knox series on enthusiasm. You can find that whole series. You can find that in a playlist on Paleocrat. It's the entire master playlist of all the stuff that I've done with MOC, Meaning Catholic, and Reason and Theology. Okay? So you can find the enthusiasm series, or go on Telegram at Paleocrat, if that's the PaleocratDiaries page, or at PaleocratDiaries Wolfpack chat. And if you just look it up and you ask for it, there's an entire playlist that brings you straight to the beginning of each episode, to the topic. Okay. Yeah, so I mean, they go more and more and more and more and more into this, and the people even say that he was addicted to vicious habits, destitute of moral character. Some persons reading this may feel that it is unfair to quote only one side of the story. I like that he brings this up about those who are favorable. What about those who are favorable to the Mormons? There exists no contemporary pro-Mormon statements from reliable and informed sources who knew the Smith family and Joseph Smith intimately. Is that true? Mr. Mormon guy, Mr. Mormon girl, let us know. Is that true? Was there simply, what did you guys forget to ask? Were you literally, inundated with it? Is there some kind of, the real reason why they didn't like him, and they were unanimous, it's a big conspiracy against the real truth? Was there not conspiring against our Lord? And do we not have statements of support of our Lord? Could they not find people, even amongst family, even amongst friends? And if people say, well, yeah, but all those people walked away. You say, dude, yes, but all those people stuck around. And even even before, you can find statements. That's how they knew Peter, by the way, St. Peter. That's how they knew him when on the night before the crucifixion, where he's around them and they're saying, aren't you the guy? You were with him. But that means people knew it. They saw it. Yeah. By the way, Jesse says, if you're making this argument that the Aaronic, which is really the Levitical priesthood, that it still exists as covenant in Exodus 28:30, okay, you must trace your priestly lineage. That's the point of this. Like, they don't take it seriously. It just all of a sudden just magically zoinked and made its way. Oh, no. That's why it had to be magical. That's why it had to be magical. Yeah. So right here, increasing distrust of the Prophet Smiths multiplied, especially after one of his former assistants, John C. Bennett, boldly exposed the practice of polygamy. And when the prophet, or general, as he liked to be known in this phase of his career, could tolerate this mounting criticism, he couldn't tolerate it anymore. He eventually ordered the destruction of its most threatening mouthpiece, an anti-Mormon publication entitled The Nauvoo Expositor. the state of Illinois intervened. Quote, right, the prophet and his brother Hiram were placed in a jail in Carthage, Illinois, to await trial for their part in the wrecking of the expositor. So he said, look, how dare you come against me? Go and destroy it. Yeah. So he couldn't say stuff like St. Paul could about how they're exposed to the world, the beatings, the being imprisoned, maligned, all these sorts of things against him. Oh, no. Can you imagine St. Paul, go over there and destroy that place? They're coming against me. Go burn that building down. Can you even imagine? No, of course not. However, on June 27, 1844, a mob comprised of some 200 persons stormed the Carthage jail and brutally murdered Smith and his brother, thus forcing upon the vigorously unwilling prophet's head the unwanted crown of early martyrdom. Yeah, he didn't want to die. He wasn't willing for that. He's like, look, I'm going to fight back. Ensuring the perpetual enshrinement in Mormon history of the, quote, true seer. So, look, so he ends up being in jail because, you got, all these different things going on with the wives. Goes to jail, ends up getting killed, ends up now martyr. Great, good job, you crazy lunatics. Going in there, literally making a martyr. What the heck? Imagine if they didn't. Imagine if they didn't. 1846, Brigham Young. I always say Brigham. Well, knowing how many wives dude had, yeah. Brigham Young, he was definitely down. Yeah. They abandoned where they were 1847 after a brutal trek through the wilderness, the Great Plains, and the Rocky Mountains. Young brought the first band of Mormons to the valley of the Great Salt Lake and is credited with the exclamation, quote, "This is the place." Is that a little bit anticlimactic? He's credited with the great quote, "This is the place." And you're like, that's literally the most basic, simple thing anybody could say. It's not like there's nothing profound in that. This is it, guys. Yeah, this is it, I think. It just sounds that way. Now maybe they've got a better way, maybe in a theatrical thing, because I know that they do that, right? They're pretty good actually with some of their productions. And so, they probably got it's like, this, yes, this is the place. And everyone's like, yeah, it is. You know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of Waiting for Guffman. Right? I don't know if you've seen it. It's an excellent documentary, by the way. Excellent documentary. And, but there's the historian. It's talking about the founder of the city. And the founder of the city promises people that he's going to lead them. He's going to lead them all the way to California. And they're going a long ways, and one day they smell, he says, do you smell it? Do you smell it? That is the salt from the ocean. We are here. We are in California. Of course, they were in Missouri. And, they walk around to try to find it. And they're like, well, I guess we took a wrong turn somewhere. But they liked it well enough, so they stayed there. They stayed there. It just reminds me of that. Yeah. Suffice it to say that Smith gave the movement the initial thrust, and Brigham supplied the momentum necessary to establish it as a bona fide religion. Young in his teachings, Smith and Young, in company with the pronouncements of the succeeding presidents, have made Mormon theology what it is. And apart from Brigham Young, Mormonism cannot be thoroughly understood. He was a man of indomitable courage, possessed of a canny nature, given to fits of ruthlessness, now conveniently forgotten by Mormon historians. One of these is evidence of his determination to control Utah, was the order that he gave to those involved in the massacre of around 120 non-Mormon immigrants to remain quiet about what has now become known as the infamous Mountain Meadows Massacre. That's actually, there's some great stuff you can read online, even Mormon historians talking about why it would be valuable for the church to be more transparent about it. In fact, I think the church finally opened it up so that people could go and read this. at least a number of things that were not previously available to them. Now, I don't, what is it? What's the name that they give is it not the Grim Reaper, but the Angel of Death that people refer to? I'm not convinced that individual was the one responsible. I think there's arguments that can be made, in fairness, right? And J-Bone says, Brigham's theology on incarnation also, blasphemy isn't a strong enough word. Totally, man. Yeah. And we'll be talking about this. This is just the introductory show. Mormonism today is a far cry from quite a number of the principles and practices of its early founders. To be sure, it maintains faithful to their basic tenets, but, as in the case of polygamy, when those tenets come in conflict with government statutes or political influence, the Latter-day Saints have wisely chosen to ignore, the word commonly used is reinterpret, the counsels of their two chief prophets. The history of the Mormons is a vast and complex subject. It's a veritable labyrinth of books, testimonies, affidavits, photographs, hearsay, and opinions. And it's only after the most careful analysis of the contemporary evidence that a picture emerges consistent with verifiable facts. It's tough. And this is one of the reasons why I like this book about it. There's many others, and we're going to be, as I said, I'm not even going to be basing it a lot off of the book. We're going to talk about their epistemology. We're going to talk about their metaphysic, okay? We're going to stick to our guns on systems analysis and not just simply look at, well, here's what they say and here's what the Bible says. To me, that is a robustly Protestant apologetic. For the average faithful Mormon, one can but have sympathy and regard. He is, by and large, honest, industrious, thrifty, and zealous in both the proclamation and promulgation of his beliefs. One only regrets that he has accepted at face value a carefully edited version of the origin and doctrinal development of his religion, instead of examining the excellent sources that not only contradict, but irrefutably prove the falsity of what is most certainly a magnificent reconstructed history. Yeah, it's to be hoped for, right? That as we further study the unfolding drama of Mormon doctrine, their beliefs, right? That the reader will come to appreciate the evolution of Mormonism and the pitfalls which most certainly exist in taking at face value the gospel according to Joseph Smith and Brigham Young. And that's what we're going to be talking about. Internal critique, external critique. We're going to be talking about these things. And I think that, look, it's one of those that, the attempt was to say, how did this begin? Who are these individuals? And we'll learn more, about Brigham Young as we go along, but the emphasis won't be so much on the individual that began the movement, right? But we've done that with every group we started so far. Even with the Word of Faith, we talked about the individuals, who they are making these claims. We did so with, the Donatists, the Montanists. That made it easy, by the way. The Montanists, for example, the Jansenists. That's an easy one, okay? Because it's in the name. It's in the name. And so being able to talk about these individuals who brought these religions to the world and to recognize in them a kind of individual that on the one hand was wildly wrong about things, but on the other hand bore those traits that are in fact quite necessary to be able to advance something, true or false, right? To whatever degree, to advance something that ends up becoming what Mormonism is today. Doesn't prove it's true, but it gives each individual credit and due. And so I hope that people watching, if you've got Mormon friends, you may say, well, they may know the history of this already. This is for people who may not. When we talk in upcoming episodes on Friday, for example, and in the Q&A, you're welcome to ask questions in the Q&A right after the show. We're doing a live Q&A over on Telegram. So make sure to go and follow us over there. Links in the description below. The Wolfpack chat, there's a live chat. You'll see a little button to join. Okay, we'll post an update. And that way you can click on it and join the group. You can listen. You can ask questions. You don't have to be on video if you don't want to. Okay. So you don't need to do any of those things. But from here forward, from this episode onward, the emphasis is not going to be on biographical details of the founders. It is going to be on describing their doctrines to better understand their worldview. So that once we understand their worldview, not just on their interpretation of strictly theological ideas, like saying what is their idea of exaltation, for example, or what do they believe about the Trinity, but how these things apply to a broader apologetic that says we're going after your system. We're at this show, we're not going piecemeal apologetic. I'm not sitting there saying, well, let's swashbuckle with verses and try to find the real interpretation of the Bible. Do you contradict it? This is what the Bible really says. Going one by one by one by one by one, that's pruning fruit. I don't do that. We say, let's look at this thing as a whole. How would these things be understood in context with these other things? That way, we can see the entire beast and go after that beast as St. Irenaeus did, as St. Francis de Sales did, to go after that with that twofold apologetic that goes after it and says, look, I'm not going to argue with the fool according to his folly, lest I be made like unto them. I'm not going to assume the presuppositions of autonomy that they have. Not going to do it. And I'm also, but I'm going to argue with them, right? According to their folly, lest they be wise in their own conceit. I'm going to say, look, if what you're saying is true, if your metaphysic is what you say, here are the difficulties, not just difficulties, but the impossibilities of knowledge. And because once you do that, and you tune in, you will see. You will see. Once you do that, and you take that apologetic method that rather than taking one bullet, you're literally Moabbing the daylights out of their entire fortress, razing that bad boy to the ground, the strongholds, razing it to the ground. And why? Because then that fortress, that's the foundation. That is HQ. You destroy that thing. You go after the genetic code of that belief system. And what's their argument after that? All they are just little disconnected little soldier men. Ah! Go back in history, find out how they fare. Find out how they fare. Go after the genetic code of the group you're dealing with. Uproot the system. Start with first things. Demonstrate that if that's true, they couldn't actually even know anything at all. If they do know something, and we grant that they do, they would know that I'm existing, you're existing, we're talking. They are aware that they have to be to work on time. They know a lot of things, but you say, but that's the problem. That's actually the problem, because your system, if true, would make what you do and what you know impossible. So in that way, you're kind of left with two sides. You really do. It's a catch-22. You're either going to have to get rid of the idea that you know anything, which is too late for that, or you get rid of your system. Your system is garbage. So expect us. Because we do as Catholic people, this show has said from the beginning, we need to make sure that we're doing the best we can when confronting people who are enthusiasts or people who are cultists, various heretics of all different shades, right? That we need to best understand what they believe, why they believe those things, what we believe, why we believe those things, why we don't believe what they believe, and how to best and most effectively communicate that to them, and not to win an argument, because this isn't a game, but to lead somebody to the Lord, to plant those seeds, to literally help in that great effort of destroying those strongholds, casting down thoughts and imaginations that dare to rise themselves, to raise up against Christ the King. We're going to do that. We are going to do that. Okay?
I wanted to.
Oh, no.
I wanted to.
That's so terrible. I haven't done this in quite a while. Here we go. Hold on. You guys, nobody saw that. It's like so good. And then all of a sudden, so bad. No! Why? Preparation. Like I said, people make mistakes. You got to do your best. You know, even give it your all each and every time, right? Work super hard, but commit it to Christ in humility. Because, you know, we're humans. People are going to make mistakes. I do all the time. And it's one of the reasons I want to encourage you again to check out the Saint Maker. Okay, check it out. Saint Maker. Go find out more information about that. And that way you can connect with us on Telegram, because we're going to be working together there, going over it, including working with me on my diet. Working with me to say, how can this help us to better establish not just a work schedule, but more importantly, those disciplines in our lives that we just need to do. Things that we really know that we need to do. Morning prayer. Do you do it? I don't do it every day. Do you even pray before every meal, or do you forget sometimes? Do you do an examination of conscience when you go to sleep, or do you forget? I forget all the time. And it's during those times when I'm forgetting that I find myself the most all over the place, scattered in a bazillion different directions, and in desperate need of help. And not just help, but to work alongside people just like you. To say, you know, we're in this together. This is a humble family apostolate. It's a Team Tiny Dancer production. You know, I'm just one guy. And so to be able to work along with others in this world, not just in this world, but the saints, to learn from them, the wisdom of the saints, the fellowship of the brethren, right? And the sisters, to be better. It's what the show is about. It's what the Saint Maker's about. It's what the show is about after this on Telegram. So see you there. Comments below. Until next time, never give up. Keep on smiling. And memento mori.
I wanted to make people dream bigger thoughts.